Hello friends, my name is Phil and welcome back to PG Prototypes. I'm very excited for today's video because I've covered a lot of ground since the last video. I'm going to show you how I did the ground cover, the ballast and the paving. The layout is really starting to come to life and I am really enjoying this process, and I even got to run a few trains this week which I'll show at the end of the video. So without any further ado, let's get cracking with today's video. Before I got started on paving and ballast, I decided to stick the fencing down first. In retrospect, I could have done this at a later stage, but it actually worked out fine this way too. I needed to make sure that there was adequate clearance for any locos or wagons passing this point, so I used a class 20 to test the positioning of the wall out. I'm going to be using contractor's acrylic a lot in this video. There are so many benefits to using it instead of other glues. It's very viscous, so it has an instant hold, which makes positioning things a heck of a lot easier. It has good working time, but it also dries relatively quickly. This product really helps speed up the building process. I put a few small blobs on the bottom of this wall section and I positioned it more or less where I wanted it. The contractor's acrylic makes it very easy to reposition and get an exact location. I cut a strip of MDF as a spacer to make sure that the wall ran parallel to the track. For my cleanup, I use a wet paintbrush to smooth out any excess acrylic. The ballast will ultimately cover these spots, but I just like to neaten it up a bit before I carry on. Whenever I've built layouts in the past, I've always liked to keep my mind open to the idea of unplanned scenes. I really felt this entrance to the yard could benefit from a small paved area. This could be used to suggest an unseen drop-off point on the other side of the layout, or even a small stopping point that could be used to suggest something like a team track supporting a few industries on an unseen part of the layout. And here are some small goods items that I will be sharing in the next video when I detail the rest of the layout, but for now I just use them to illustrate what sort of detailing could be used on this particular spot. A large percentage of the layout needs to be paved, and this can actually be quite tricky. The first hurdle to overcome is getting the shapes right. I took the best top view photo I could, and then I scaled the photo in IntelliCAD and proceeded to trace the paving over the image. Once I had my shapes marked out in IntelliCAD, went over to the laser cutter and cut them out on 1.5mm card. Each section of paving is made up of 3 layers of card, and this is so that I can get the correct height to match the top of the rail. Just like before, I used the acrylic to glue each sheet down, and I used the cutting mat to smooth each part out to ensure that everything remained level. I really did my best to get the paving sheets as close to the right measurements as possible, but when they didn't work out, I just adjusted them as needed. This is a time-consuming process, but it's actually far easier than some of the other methods used to create paving. So the benefits of using this method is that you can cover large areas quickly, and there's little to no additional work required to fit it in place. When I did encounter tricky sections, I used a piece of tracing paper to mark out the sections I needed to produce. I scanned it, traced it over in IntelliCAD, and then cut it out of card. It's not a perfect method, but it works pretty well, and making adjustments was relatively easy. After I had glued down the first 2 layers of my paving, I then added the top layers, which have concrete paving engraved into them. For now, they just get a spray of grey primer before installation, and I'll tackle the weathering later on in the video. I find it so funny that a few parallel lines can all of a sudden start to bring a layout to life. I have spoken about it in previous videos, but I hope today's video will really highlight how layering works on a project like this. And this is a type of visual layering, I suppose, seeing these parallel lines of the paving starts to transform the layout into a particular type of area. I placed all the buildings in place just to make sure that the project was going according to the idea that I had in my head. After looking at this current configuration of the buildings, I realized that I wasn't too happy with the placement of the coal bunker. Few options for it to remain on the paved side of the tracks, but I felt that it disrupted the path of any vehicle that would move along this paving. So the next logical option was to move it to the other side of the track. Once I saw it in place, I saw an opportunity for another interesting detail point that I could add to the layout. I thought it would be the perfect space for a coal grate that would empty into a fictional coal bunker underneath the track. So if you're a purist, you may want to look away, as this is a completely freelanced idea and it isn't based on any particular prototype. I just designed what I thought would look good in this particular space. This design also led me to thinking about a small front-end loader that could move excess coal to wherever it would be needed on the layout, and I will actually feature this vehicle in another video, as well as a custom-made forklift for the layout. But I'll chat about that in another video and I'll make those models available. I am much happier with this configuration, and I feel it shows how great freelancing can be for your layout. And if you're open to change, you can really add some interesting design opportunities to your layout, no matter what stage you're at in the building process. Next, I needed to fill the space in between the paved rail, so I chose to simulate some metal plates. These will not be glued in place permanently, as I want to be able to access the rail for cleaning at a later stage, and I do have experience with this on a previous layout that I did with permanent paving, and it was a nightmare to clean track. I gave these components a brown base coat for now, and I'll tackle the metallic look a bit later on in the video. On to cleaning up the edges of the paving. Nothing complicated here, just some bricks painted up like the buildings and stuck in place with a little bit of acrylic. There were some gaps on the tops that needed filling, so I just used some acrylic and a small piece of card to fix this problem. Before I can secure the coal grate in place, I need to paint the baseboard black to create the illusion of depth below the grate. Again, nothing fancy here, just some black acrylic paint. The painting is done and I secure the top layer in place. The paving for McGilvery Engineering was done for now, so I could get cracking on the ballast. Over the years, I've encountered so many different ways to do ballast, and this is just one of those things that is very subjective. All I can do is show you my method, but I feel the best method is always the one that the individual finds easiest and correct to do for their layout. For this project, my ballast mix is 1 part of play sand, 1 part indoor finishing plaster, and 2 parts Woodland Scenics medium ballast. It could even be about 3 parts medium ballast. The color doesn't really matter because everything is going to get painted later on in the video. I sprinkle a small amount on at a time, and I use my finger to smooth out the ballast and to get it in between the railway sleepers. Once I have the bulk of the ballast in place, I use a paintbrush to clean the inside edge of the track, along with all the places my fingers don't really fit. There isn't really a quick way to get this particular method done, so I suggest some good prog rock with those really long tracks to get you through this type of work. For me, it was some Yes, followed by a little Dream Theater, and before I knew it, an entire day had passed doing ballast. For the large flat areas, I used a piece of scrap card to gently compact everything in place. I find it's best to try and get as close to what I want when the ballast is still dry like this. With everything in place, I start to spray the ballast down with a very soft mist of water mixed with a drop of dishwashing liquid soap. You can now see that original ballast color coming through, but again, it isn't important at all. It's all going to get sprayed. After spraying everything down, I made sure to clean up all the excess water on the paved areas. There will still be a little bit of swelling on this card, but it can be pushed down when the glue is added in the next step. So it's time to secure everything in place. I've mixed a little PVA glue with some water, a drop of liquid soap, and it's mixed to a slightly thicker than milky consistency, and I've placed it in a bottle with a nozzle so that I can help control the flow of this glue. I carefully apply my glue mix, and if there's any sign that the glue is not absorbing or the ballast is lifting, I give that spot a light misting of my water mix before adding more glue to it. While the glue is still wet, I add some Woodland Scenics Fine Turf. This is only for texture. It will get painted over. I like to have a few textures to work with for a base ground cover. I will still add greenery later on, but again, this is just a texture layer. This layer is also great at absorbing excess glue. After leaving everything to dry completely, I then hit all the ground cover with a slightly watered down black base coat. This is going to help the next layers of color to go on a bit easier and to be more uniform. Here's an overview of the layout to see how the color is starting to change. I now give the entire layout a coat of Vallejo dark grey blue. You can really see all the textures coming to life in this clip. The plaster and the sand create finer flat textures, the ballast a fine stone texture, and the fine turf adds a little bit of height to the ground cover. I use the remaining paint in the airbrush to add shadow to all the lines on the paved areas. With the track dry from the previous step, I'm going to start weathering the rail. First up, it's some Vallejo dark earth, which gives a great dusty look. It's a very light layer applied from a distance, but it really helps pull the detail out of all the raised sections on the track. I want to add some light oxidation to the rail, so I'm going to use Vallejo Hull Red for this. And you have to be really careful with this color as it can get far too intense very, very quickly. I just do gentle light layers and I build it up slowly until I get the look that I want. Let's have a look at what this weathering did to the overall appearance of the layout. I'm going to mention it again, this is so subjective. This is how I like a yard to look. It's weathered, but it's still in use. When I see the colors of this particular scene, I can almost imagine the smell of moisture, oil, grease, and machine fluid. You can see that I haven't stopped the overspray from hitting the walls or the paving. If you're careful about it, it's a great way to blend different materials and surfaces together. With the groundwork done, it was time to tackle the greenery. I've used a few different shades of green and olive drab to mark out potential areas for vegetation. You can really start to see the random variation of color and texture starting to come out here. Now I can take full advantage of all these textures by using a white acrylic to dry brush the entire layout. I really feel that heavy dry brushing makes a layout look far more stylized. I like this type of look. I like it to look more like a model and less like perhaps a photorealistic scene. You could very easily leave this step out. Just a note, the white will tone down a lot as it dries further. Let's see another overview of the layout to see how this step has changed the overall look of the layout. The highlights are very dramatic here, but the addition of color with vegetation is going to pull it all together in the next step. I'm going to start my vegetation layer with some Woodland Scenics Fine Summer Turf. I'm using a thick quickset PVA wood glue. It does dry clear, so that's a very important part of this step. You need to have a PVA that dries clear. I dab it into place, making sure it stays thick enough to hold the flock down well, and then I sprinkle the flock on in fine layers and I gradually build up the thickness that I want. This is another step that can be done in many different ways. If you were using a ballast that was already the correct color that you wanted, you could easily add this layer of flock just after the thinned glue used to secure the ballast. If you do go that route though, you need to know that the flock will dry hard and this might not look the way that you want it to when everything is dry. I leave everything to dry completely and then I add another layer of PVA glue, and it's onto the static grass with my homemade Frankenstein applicator. I really struggled to film this step, so I just kept this footage to a minimum. Once the static grass had dried, I lightly sprayed a dark yellow over the center of each patch of grass. It's just a light coating and it's just on the tips of the grass, and it just creates a little bit of highlight as if sunlight is hitting the grass. Take note of how much the white dry brushing has toned down after it's had a chance to dry. You may have noticed the holes I cut out of the paving for the second industry. I thought it would look great if there was an extra little bit of detail on this paving, so I made some manhole covers, painted them black, dry brushed them with silver, and I'm installing them with PVA glue. These very small touches add a little bit of detail and life to each scene. Whilst my groundwork dried, I moved back to the track inserts. They all got a coat of matte black spray paint, and once they were dry, I dry brushed them with some silver acrylic paint and a little touch of white dry brushing. Nothing fancy, but they get the job done. And with those done, let's take a look at where the layout is so far. You can really start to see how the greenery has toned the layout down quite a bit. This is another very subjective addition. It's a little bit of color. I want to brighten the scene up with some flowers in the patches of grass. I'm using very fine colored flock in shaker bottles. I give the grass a spray with Firm Holds hairspray, and I very lightly shake on a mix of flowers. After I've added the flowers, the last step for today is to add the track inserts. I'm going to use a bit of press stick or glue tack to secure the inserts to the track. This will allow me to lift them for track cleaning at a later stage. I'm happy I went for the metal look. I think it works really well on the scene. With all tasks complete for today's video, let's take a look at the end result. I've spoken a lot about layering in today's video. Layering is such an important concept to apply in my opinion. There are so many occasions where people give up on a project because they don't like the way that it's going, the way that it looks, and they don't realize that they might just be a few layers away from getting the result that they actually want. It's good to build up colors in layers and to not be scared to make mistakes with this. Generally speaking, you can go from darker colors to lighter colors. This is on top of whatever your base coat is. So I always like to put washes on to emphasize shadows and recesses, and then I like to use lighter colors to highlight the tips of textures. I find that using these two techniques creates a nice contrast. I want to emphasize again that this style that I've done the layout in is the way that I like it to look. It gives it that model toyish quality, which I really like. I love that. I think that one has to be far more precise for super realism, and that there's a different approach to it from the start. You need to spend a lot of time looking at photos, trying to match the colors of what you want, and there aren't these harsh contrasts between colors. Everything flows a bit more. But that's not really my forte. I like this type of modeling. This is what I enjoy doing. I had tried the realistic route many years ago. I'm not too good at it, but I actually enjoyed this more, so that worked out well in my case. But you really have to choose the route that you are going to go. Something I didn't include in today's video was the cleanup after all of this work. I did a lot of work cleaning the top of the rails and all the point contacts. I just didn't feel that it would be something that people would want to watch. But there was a lot of cleaning, and it is something that I should note when you're doing a job like this. Just be prepared for it. It's a bit difficult to keep your rails completely clean when you're airbrushing and spraying and all these types of things. So what's left to do on the layout? Well, I've got to add all the people and the boxes and crates and all these types of small scenery details. I'm going to consider putting lights in the building, so I might tackle that in the next episode. A very big thing that I need to get done is the throttle holder, so I'll probably look at that in the next video. And the last thing that I want to do is add fascia around the edge of the layout, just to clean everything up and make it look a little more polished. Another thing I did notice was that there's a lot of twist in the layout, so I might just add something to the bottom of the layout to stop that from happening. Otherwise, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed my methods. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I love reading the comments. I love being in touch with all of you. Since the last video, I've had great conversations with quite a few people, and I'm really grateful for that. I'm grateful for the support as usual. Now, if you did enjoy the video, please click like and subscribe. I would really appreciate that. That's if you haven't already subscribed. And if it just really wasn't your type of thing, don't worry about clicking like or subscribe. I can totally understand that too. You're welcome to just watch the video and enjoy it. So with all of that done, thanks so much for watching, and until next time, keep training.